Good morning. It's time for the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by Renegade River and Spring Lake. And here is your host, Mike Hewitt.
Hey, good morning. First time in a long time that my trip to Muskegon wasn't treacherous. The roads were actually clear and life was good. As much as I love the lakeshore, going into Lansing was kind of a relief because you get past Coopersville, and the roads are significantly better. Listen, this morning I've got Matt Wiedenhoeft in the studio with me, and I've got a handful of topics that I want to talk over. In fact, Jim Riley is walking in right now. Jim, I don't know if you're planning on staying or going, but I do want you to talk for just a little bit with me about prevailing wage. I know that yesterday in Muskegon there was a vote put down by a 2/3 majority that said no new taxes, thanks, we have enough. And part of that may have been the way the Muskegon County contracts for labor. Am I wrong or am I right? Tell me you know more about Muskegon than...
Well, prevailing wage is an issue that really folks ought to become aware of because it's being discussed probably as we speak in some committee in Lansing. Prevailing wage is a union term that sounds kind of innocuous. If you're going to hire folks, you want to pay them the prevailing wage. Maybe you don't know what's the best amount to pay a carpenter or somebody to build your roads or what have you. But the reality is it's a scam, and it's a scam to force governments to pay more than what the real prevailing wage would be in your community. And prevailing wage is insidious to this extent. It's self-imposed. The state of Michigan has imposed upon all of the spending that it does, that if it spends money on a project, state money, it must impose prevailing wage. And I'll explain what it is in just a moment. But it must impose prevailing wage on all that spending. Some states, as a matter of fact, most states do not have that self-imposed rule. But, of course, Michigan for so many years has been a union state. This is, by the way, a benefit that grandly helps and enriches unions who grandly help and enrich their Democrat supporters within the various legislature. But individually, counties can decide whether or not they would like to impose prevailing wage restrictions upon their own spending. Ottawa County, which is, of course, where you guys live, one of the most successful counties within our state, has said that's a ridiculous idea. We're not going to impose prevailing wage. If we are going to build a road or build a building, we are going to bid out, and we're going to allow everyone to
best service,
bid on it.
Best service, best price.
Well, yeah, exactly. In the same manner that anyone would do the same thing. You want to buy a car, you want to buy a can of soup, you're going to look at the price, you're going to make your own decision.
Doesn't the average citizen, whenever they want to, say, buy a can of soup, don't they purposefully go out and find the most difficult to find, most expensive soup that tastes just like the soup they could have found right off the bat?
Well, actually, if you're from Hollywood, perhaps that's what you would do. But most of us have limited funds, and we make decisions. If you go into Meijer's, for instance, go into Walmart, for instance, you'll see a variety of choices for tomato soup, some more expensive than others. Some people say, hey, it's worth my money to buy a can of soup for $3 or what have you. Those are decisions that everyone makes every single day, multiple times a day. Those are decisions that companies make, and those are decisions that most counties in the United States of America also make. But in Muskegon, the county commissioners have consistently voted, and interestingly, every single Republican county commissioner in Muskegon County has for well over 10 years voted to impose prevailing wage, right along with their union-supporting Democrat comrades. And let's get into what prevailing wage simply is. Prevailing wage is a scheme that sets wages for various employment categories, and let's just say carpentry and electricians and things of that sort, that must be paid if the county is going to spend money. But it's more than just wages. By the way, the wages in many cases are anywhere between 10 and 60% higher than the wages that you would pay in a non-prevailing wage environment.
To as much as 25% higher.
I'd say as much as 60% higher, depending on the particular category. They're saying it's very hard to come up with exact numbers, but the reality is that it's a wage that is typically not the same as you would find here in Muskegon County. But it's much, much worse than that because it imposes union rules. And, of course, we know that it's union rules that have sent most of the big car manufacturers out of our state. It's those rules that make it almost impossible for factories and other manufacturing businesses to be competitive. It imposes union benefits. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Let's just say that you have a very successful non-union construction company, and you want to bid, let's just say, on the Muskegon County Jail. Well, unless you agree to be a prevailing wage company, you cannot even bid. But let's say you say, well, this is a big contract. They're going to spend over $40 million on this. I'm going to bid on it. The problem is your employees who were getting paid whatever competitive wage was before will have to get the new prevailing wage. That's going to make it a little rough if you have to pay for them and then reduce their wages down the road. That's a challenge enough. But here's where it gets really bad. You will, for this particular project, have to impose the union rules, the big, thick book of all the various rules. In many cases, unless you're a real big company, you may not even have the ability to know what those rules are. And you can imagine if you don't know what the rules are, the union folks will go in and tell you what's going on. And you must impose union benefits. And this perhaps is the real kicker. In many cases, we know that, of course, union benefits are what put Ford and General Motors into bankruptcy. They were paying retirement benefits and retirement benefits for health care that just were not sustainable in any fiscal way. You'll have to pay those benefits and account for the entire time that employee is living, because, of course, pension benefits go until you die. For those employees during that particular period of time. This is an accounting nightmare. The practical matter is when a county says, I'm going to impose prevailing wage on our projects, companies that are non-union but have been very competitive, probably could bid significantly lower, don't even bother. It's just not even worth it.
I tell you, in a reason folks were focusing on this morning is that, yes, first it was tied to the vote that failed in Muskegon yesterday, but we've got a very significant vote in Michigan coming in May. And it's been my position ever since this concept of a tax increase came to be, it's been my position that if the state of Michigan genuinely needs money after they've done all of the common sense solutions it would take to reduce costs, then you go, okay, if it is what it is. But to still contract using prevailing wage while at the same time saying we need more money is a non-starter for Mike Hewitt.
And remember, it's self-imposed. This is not something that Muskegon County it's forced on Muskegon County, and it is not something that is forced on the state of Michigan. Now,
it's political favors.
It's vote buying.
This is about money.
It is vote buying.
As an uber left legislator, I'm looking for my contributions from the UAW and the Teamsters and the endless list of unions and so to do
that support Democrats, and they're proudly and openly in support of Democrats. But let me just take one thing: we are now well into 4 years of total Republican control of the state of Michigan. So it's one thing, and I have absolutely no problem with the Democrat to stand tall and say, look, I believe in union jobs. I believe in prevailing wage. I'm going to vote for this. Fair enough. Democrats are open and proud about that. Republicans tend to say, no, we think choice, certainly in spending the very rare tax dollars, choice matters here. And yet, the Republicans, after 4 years of control, have not changed it. They are talking about it right now.
I got to tell you,
we'll see what happens.
The new Michigan's new Senate Majority Leader, Senator Arlen Meekhoff, the very first bill he advanced in this legislative session was to end prevailing wage, and that fight is going on right now. And so so it's one thing for you to say that, and obviously the facts are the facts. But it would be disingenuous to say that they have not been trying to push back on this. Frankly, that's what Right to Work was the beginning of, the first necessary step. But if you look at prevailing wage from a historical standpoint, the term came from just after the Civil War, and it was tied to or part of a Congress's, when Congress came up with the National 8-Hour Day law. And so, I mean, it's got some history. And so but the funny part about it is it may have been a good thing. We could debate that, but it's been co-opted to mean something very different than it initially did. Back then, a person was paid for their day's wage, not for their hour's wage. And so when they came up with prevailing wage as a uniform way of doing federal contracting, which is where it came from following the Civil War, they were looking for ways, two things, one negative, one positive. First off, can we find a way to make workers more efficient? Is there a way to come up with more results for taxpayers' money from what we're doing? But the other thing, frankly, was it was the first step for Congress to start affecting market control. And it was the preempt to Congress legislating or authorizing itself to get involved in market currents, which I firmly believe Congress has no business in.
Let me just clarify one thing.
Yep.
The United States, the federal government, does impose prevailing wage rules,
yes,
regulations, pay, benefits on all of their contracts. Again, we don't have control here in Muskegon, certainly in the state of Michigan, of how the federal government spends their money. I don't think anybody thinks the federal government's very wise in the way they spend their money. But that is a national policy that has been determined by folks above us. Our state has a chance to change it. As you said, Mike, we've got a newly invigorated Republican government. They're talking about it today. We'll see what they do. Talk is cheap. Action tells you really what's in their hearts.
It does, but it affects so many facets of our cost of government, cost of doing business for government. To your point, from local all the way to the federal, everything that the governments do in combination, they found the most inefficient way of being stewards of our money, and there are folks that will stand there and unabashedly defend it, and
Mike,
it's not defendable.
It's pay to play. The unions say, look, we want this. We will give you lots of money, and the politicians vote for it, and they get very richly rewarded for it.
What's the latest number? Somewhere in the teens in terms of the percentage of labor that's currently represented by unions.
Well, outside of the public sector, which of course it's golly, I think in the public sector it's got to be close to 60%. But in the private sector, in other words, businesses,
sure,
it's someplace under 20%. And think about this: if you are a supporter of labor unions and union jobs, how successful have those folks who promised you good things will come down the pike? How successful have they been here in Muskegon at protecting those union jobs? What they've done is they've shut down those union jobs. They've moved those companies either into bankruptcy or out of the state, or in too many cases, just a tiny little bit south or east of here in both Kent and Ottawa counties.
I was discussing a big percentage of layoff of municipal employees with a union person who had been a former union leader. And I said, they're going to lay off X number of employees. And he said, well, whatever, but just pay the ones that are left well. Stop.
Simple greed,
what
folks.
What happened to sovereignty or solidarity and all of those words that they love to throw around? Cast these 50 people overboard. Just pay everyone else grossly over what market value is.
The older ones with seniority.
Seniority?
Seniority,
yeah,
not senility. Because they're not the stupid ones. They're the ones who are getting the enormous pay benefits in retirement. We seem to be the stupid ones because we too often keep voting for elected officials who do put their stamp on that every time they sit down in front of a union contract.
What you just said, I think, is probably the biggest point of all, Jim, and that's that we're the ones paying for it and we're voting for it, and it's absolute crazy. It's the craziest path to government stewardship that we can. And we're going. We love these. These are nice words. Prevailing wages got to be good. Jeepers, it sounds so warm and fuzzy.
Well, that's what your show's all about, is trying to get the word out. You know, there is an argument for prevailing wage, and I'd love to hear somebody come out and make that case. But we're trying to make a case, at least to give the information to people so they have some sense of what's going on. But that prevailing wage is part of the union contract here in Muskegon County. Muskegon County tells us there's no money available for roads. They are so efficient. By the way, the governor, who also tells us there's no money for roads, the state is so efficient, there's not a penny available, just gave over $20 million in just grants Some of it went to MCC, to some to West Shore Community, just to expand their base. Maybe it's a worthy deal, but is it more worthy than roads?
The left is always excited about using class definition: middle class, low class, upper class, rich 1%, 99%. They've got a whole bag of different ways of identifying people. But just for the sake of this dialogue, imagine taking the average middle class citizen. By the way, I reject all of those terminologies, so when I use it, you already know I'm being a little bit facetious to start. Take the average middle class citizen, and he or she has got some labor that they want done at the house, whether it's trimming a tree that's risking falling on their home. Do they look to say, how can I do this in the most expensive fashion possible? Or do they look for a person that would do it best job, best price?
Let me give you just a quick example. The chairman of the Muskegon County Board of Commissioners, a very staunch Democrat, by the way, not the current chairman, the most recent, staunch Democrat, staunch union supporter, and vocal supporter of prevailing wage. Twice now, and this gentleman lived at the time anyway in Montague, twice I've seen him at the Walmart in Roosevelt Park. Drove all the way out of his way to the Walmart in Roosevelt Park. I wonder why. Maybe they had better prices than the other Walmart. To buy his groceries and what various other products. When he saw me, turned away and tried to hide. So in other words, on one hand, they tell us we must be locked in. You can't like Walmart because they're non-union, et cetera, and so on. On the other hand, when they do spend their own money as opposed to spending the taxpayers' money, when they spend their own money, they seem to be a little wiser about that spending. Well, who'd have thunk?
Listen, what we're going to do is we're going to go to a break, folks. But when we come back, I want to talk about the gun legislation that's being bantered around in our state capitol. Just passed Senate, and it's right now being debated in the House. Folks, we will be right back.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. I am Mike Hewitt. In with me now is just Matt Wiedenhoeft. He was here before, but I don't think anybody heard him. And listen, Jim has left the station or studio, but I know wherever he's at, he's listening, so we can make fun of him right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, he didn't have that nice shirt.
Yeah, he didn't have the PJ top on this time, thank God. So, okay, enough on Jim. Listen, what I wanted to talk about this segment, then in the final segment, by the way, I'll talk a little bit about the convention for the state Republican Party that just took place, just a little bit teaser for the end. But in this segment, what I wanted to talk about is I'm reading the headline from MLive.com, House Dems propose universal background check, open carry amendments to Michigan gun bills. Folks, there's currently a Michigan gun bill that's been passed by the Senate. It's now waiting on the House to take an action on it. It is similar to a bill that Governor Snyder vetoed last fall. And just for full disclosure here, everybody understand I own Renegade River, which is a gun shop. I tell you that because, yes, I have an agenda, but my agenda may not be what you think it is. So let's just work our way through this. First off, last year, the problem that Governor Snyder indicated that he had with the bill was that it would have allowed folks with open personal protection orders against them. So they've threatened their wife or significant other. They've threatened somebody to the point where an individual or a group of people had to go to a judge and say, I need a personal protection order to protect me from that person. So in this instance, I got to tell you, if I were Governor Snyder, I probably would have done the same thing. As much as I really liked the bill, and of course the people that are on my side of the debate, I'm a gun advocate, maybe get mad at me for saying that, but in the end, it's a tough one. But I don't blame him. I just don't. Now, having said that, we're back up to bat. That language has been altered. It's been removed. So that shouldn't be an obstacle to this. But then I'm reading what some of the House Democrats have wanted to add to the bill, and I like to see. And normally, by the way, they like empirical evidence. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about empirical evidence. And by the way, Renegade River, I do not sell firearms at gun shows. And most of the language that they're talking about is focused at this gun show loophole. He said is big enough to drive I'm quoting, loophole big enough to drive an armored truck through. He's wrong. Okay? He's just wrong. And the reason I get to say he's wrong with such confidence, keeping in mind Renegade River does not sell guns at gun shows. My reason is not because I'm against a gun show. It's because I can't be in two places at one time. And Renegade River is a small individual company. It's just me. So I either am at my shop or I'm at a gun show. I've chosen to stay at my shop. So if a customer drives 30 miles to get to me, they're not going to get to find the door locked because, gone fishing or at the gun show. That's a business decision that I've made. I tell you that so that you know I'm not attacking gun shows, nor am I defending them. I'm just looking at empirical evidence. So I spent about an hour and a half last night looking for an example of any of the shootings that have taken place where the firearm was purchased at a gun show. I can't find one, folks. It doesn't exist. So for these folks to talk about loopholes that are this driving difference in our safety, it's a bold-faced idiocy lie.
Isn't that like the famous quote Romney had against Obama? It doesn't matter how many times you say it, it doesn't make it true.
It just doesn't change the facts. So he goes on to talk about the school, the school thing for open carry, because you can carry your firearm if you're open carry at a public school, and the left will say, why in the world would you need a gun at a school? And I would say, well, if I were one of the people that were dead at the school, I might have wished I would have had my gun. Yes. It isn't a gun-free zone to people that don't care about these laws. I just don't, for the life of me, understand why people can't sit down and look at the empirical evidence that they normally embrace to come up with crafting their ideas and their views, especially laws that govern us. I don't understand what they don't get about shall not be infringed. I just don't get it. I don't.
Don't we have the ultimate gun law in the Ten Commandments? Thou shalt not kill.
Yeah,
they didn't listen to that one. All of a sudden, they're going to listen to the next one and the next one.
But now you're interjecting faith and.
Okay, well, let's go the ultimate law: first-degree murder.
Yeah.
Once murder was illegal, that didn't make a difference if you did it with a spoon, a straw, or a gun, right? I mean,
so then the bad guy says, "I was going to kill you," but then it occurred to me that there's a law that tells me I can't do that.
So I'm not going to. There was a cartoon somewhere, and it was one of those 3 or 4 images, and the first image is there's a guy, he's an old fella, and he's at a party store. You can tell that by the cigarettes and the liquor behind him, right? And then there's a fella, you can't see the guy's face, you can't see him. It's clearly a stick-up. And then the next frame shows the old man, and he's pointing at a sign that says gun-free zone. And then the next frame, you see the bad guy going, oh, jeepers, I didn't realize that, and he leaves. It just absolutely defies common sense that these people think this way. Now, all of these gun-free zones, I know this stuff gets to the point where it's cliche because it's said so often, but it's true. All of the gun-free zones. If I were a bad guy looking for a way to kill somebody, I wouldn't go to a gun shop. I'd go to a school or to a mall or to a theater where all of these places have big placards that say this is a gun-free zone. Bad guy goes, I'm going there, there's no guns. The Aurora shooting, that was the only movie theater in the whole area that had a gun-free movie theater, and that's why that one was chosen.
And people still sit and argue about these things. And I look at it and say, I'm okay with it. Listen, I'm not some rabid ideologue that says I want my position no matter what. Show me the evidence. Show me the empirical evidence that says that I'm wrong. And you know what? I'll get right here on this microphone and say I'm wrong. But they won't do that. They just repeat the same mantra over and over and over. And to your point, Matt, it doesn't change the fact that they're wrong. Now, I don't. There's a lot of folks that don't carry. I don't know the numbers for Muskegon County. I understand that there's 12,000 plus people that have concealed carry permits in Ottawa County, but the vast bulk of them don't actually carry.
They've gotten it to make the background check for purchasing. A lot of them are shotgun people and rifle people, by the way, that are wanting to go to a gun club and shoot clay pigeons. Or there are some of them that I know personally, a lot of them I know personally, that are just collectors. So it's not just because they got that to make gun purchasing easier, because it's a pretty extensive background check to get that concealed carry. But and to that point, the greater part of this bill, the point of the bill that we're talking about today, is to change how the state of Michigan as a state handles concealed carry licenses. Currently, it goes before a gun board, whether you meet with that gun board or not. Every county, there's 83 counties. They all interpret it differently. So the joke was when I went with 3 of my 4 son-in-laws for our concealed carry school, we all went, the 3 of us, those 3 son-in-laws and myself, so the 4 of us went together. A couple of us lived in Muskegon County, a couple of us lived in Ottawa County. The Muskegon County folks got their concealed license within 2 weeks of applying for it, and it took me almost 6 months in along with my other son-in-law from Ottawa. And you go, there's obviously a different political approach to this. And by the way, if you'd have told me the story in advance, I would have assumed that Muskegon would have been the slow one and Ottawa would have been the lightning rod one, just because I'm obviously wrong on this point, but it feels like concealed carry or guns in general tend to be a conservative or a right-wing or kind of in our wheelhouse, if you will. And Ottawa has a reputation for in total being more conservative, certainly than Muskegon County. But the actual issue of these things are opposite of that. And I really don't know why that is, so I'm not trying to address that. But what I am trying to say is that the citizens of the state of Michigan ought not to be treated differently because of which county they happen to live in when we're talking about a state law. And so the purpose of this bill is to change who's going to handle it to the state police doing the background checks, and then the clerk's office of each county just issuing after the background check has been done. What do you think about that, Matt?
I would like it. My wife doesn't have one yet, and I've been wanting to get her one for a long time. I have.
Are you
mine.
trying to tell me you're armed right now?
I'm always armed. I got my right arm and my left arm. That's the gun show, buddy.
Yeah, okay.
But no,
That's what Olive Oil said.
And I got my Uncle Glock. He's always with me close. But no, I want to get her one. One is the cost of it, but then the time, the waiting period it just takes forever for her. You know, if she took the class, and then at least a minimum of a month for the board to see it if you go after that date, and then this and this. I'd rather it be that she takes the class, she gets the background, she gets the license. Let's get it quick. I mean, obviously, I'm going for a reason.
What's the reason?
Well, for her, I want her to be protected. And I want that if I leave one of something in the car,
I don't think I understand
okay with that.
I don't think I understand that logic, because I got the car part. We'll come back to that in a minute, by the way, because that's a very good point. But I didn't get what you were talking about with a series of events. She's not starting it because it takes too long. It seems
that and the cost of it.
The cost is kind of prohibitive.
Yeah, I mean, last time I checked, it was like about $100 to $200, depending where you go for the class.
130-ish now seems to be pretty average.
But then a lot of places are making you bring your own pistol and ammo now.
Okay.
So that then increases.
Listen, this is about competition, what you're talking about now.
Oh, I know.
Honest.
I know.
So you don't say, this guy wants $130 and I got to bring my own ammo and my own lunch because it's an 8-hour class.
I picked the place I did because it included everything and it was cheaper.
Well, but that's competition.
Yeah.
Welcome to America.
I love it.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that part. I had the problem with now I got to go pay $100 and some for this license.
Maybe the prevailing wage people should look at this particular dialogue we're having.
Oh, you think they'd get it?
I don't know. So you should be looking for the single most expensive, cumbersome class you can possibly find.
It's got to be the
wife.
best if it's the most expensive, right?
Must be.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, if we could only get taxpayers to pay for it, that's what you're thinking, I can tell.
I am. They could only market for them. If we could get the state to market for gun shops, you guys would be all set.
You know, I'm a gun guy, but I'm also a safety nut. And so one of the dialogues, I get myself in this argument a lot. I'll probably get emails at nasty grams. But you talked about when you have a concealed carry permit, so you have your gun stored perhaps in your center console. A lot of folks do. I got to tell you, I'm the opposite of that. And I understand your point was that if you get out to go into the store to pay for your gas, now she's alone in the car without a concealed carry license and that gun is still in a console. These are the things, in my view, by the way, that give the Uber left some ammunition, no pun intended. And I say that because I have a concealed carry. I carry about not even 50% of the time. Depends on what I'm doing. At the radio station, because I've heard a rumor that not everyone agrees with me. Okay, it shocked the heck out of me when that first was shared with me. But my point is that when I have my firearm with my concealed carry, it is never away from my body. It just isn't. If I'm not where I can feel it, it's unloaded. It's no longer functional. It's locked. I'm passionate about that part. It's the thing that people at Renegade River have heard me say 100 times, talking about safety. I've got 4 daughters and I got 9 grandbabies. And yes, I'm a gun advocate, but I don't want any of them hurt. And so I go to the other. I'm probably a Uber. I'm ultra conservative when it comes to where that firearm is at and what it can do. In fact, I get into the debate with women from time to time over using their purse as a holster. I couldn't get any more against that, but that's just me.
Well, look what just happened not too long ago with that.
I'm not trying to take anybody's right from them, so I don't want to have people think I'm into that debate. I'm just telling you, if I have a firearm on me, I know it is a tremendous amount of responsibility. It is. It's huge. It's. I don't want nobody hurt by accident. Mm-hmm. By the way, I don't want to shoot myself in the butt cheek either. Okay, it's just, all jokes aside, it's a gigantic responsibility, and so things like center consoles and purses and anything that doesn't put me directly in contact and here's the big word, directly in control of my firearm. I'm about as opposed to those things as I could be on a personal basis, not politically.
Well, if I'm driving, most of the time I'll put it in my side door.
Yep.
On my left side.
A lot of folks do, and they even sell holsters that mount onto the underdash and all kinds of things.
So it's next to me, and it's not digging then. But then you get out to pump gas.
See where we're different. We're different. I think part of the responsibility and the burden, you talked about digging because all of a sudden it's uncomfortable on you.
I got to get a smaller one.
I ain't going there. So I think holsters are important, and I think they got to make you so you can feel that gun, so you know constantly. If I have a firearm with me, there is never a point when I'm not in contact with that gun. It's just how I am. It's me.
Well, I put it in my bag a lot too with me, and I carry my bag around, and everybody will go and set their stuff down at like a meeting or whatnot, and they'll be like, "Why do you still have your bag?" I'm like, "I'm carrying my uncle around." And then everybody knows what that means.
Yeah, I got to tell you though, I'm glad we're on this topic because I don't agree with you at all. I would never have don't show me, I don't want to see it. I would never have my firearm where it wasn't in contact with me. He's got it in his purse. He's got a man purse. And
just because it's made by Coach doesn't make it a purse?
It looks like a purse. Brian, does that look like a purse? It's a big purse, but it's a purse.
Briefcase?
It's a purse. That's a man purse,
see?
I'm telling you.
2 on 1, 2 on 1.
I guess a briefcase.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just being politically correct, Brian. He's just being a nice guy. He's a nice guy. I've never heard him say anything bad about anybody, even when they were carrying a purse like that, Matt.
Hey, I just got this too. Now I'm going to go return it.
I don't blame you. Folks, we're gonna go to a break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the state convention. We'll be right back.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. Mike Hewitt here with Matt Wiedenhoeft, and we're going to talk a little bit about state Republican, the party convention that just came by. But before we get to that, I'm still back looking at the article on the gun thing, and I noticed on the little side panel of MLive they're talking about a police car totaled, pedestrian injured in a chain reaction crash on Mackinac Bridge. Have you ever been across that bridge in the wintertime?
I did last year for the first time. It was the first time I ever went across it, and we were on a coach bus, and the driver insisted on driving against the right lane where that railing only came up to maybe the middle of the tire, and it was windy and scary.
Look at the picture. Now, folks, you can't see it, obviously, because
we're not doing that.
I'm just telling you now. I'm looking at a picture of the Mackinac Bridge, and the picture was taken at the beginning of the bridge, so right as you're starting to curve and head up the hill, and it looks smoke covered, but what it is, this is like the picture of cold, and it's wind blowing snow is what it is. And that bridge is, if I remember right, it's 5 miles long. Am I wrong? How long is that thing?
I'm not sure. 5 miles?
I don't know. It was the longest bridge for a long time.
Yeah. It's over 25,000 feet then.
I don't know. It's a long one.
Yeah, no, it's like the longest in North America or something crazy like that.
I don't know that it is anymore, but I know this. I know the only thing I know for a fact is that I am not driving on that bridge. Look at this picture. You can't even see the truck. You see two headlights, but you don't see you can't, and this is daylight in these pictures I'm looking at. And if I can't see, this is it looks like, I can't tell what it is. It's a large vehicle, but the only thing I can see is like this ghostly haze and two headlights. And I'm thinking, this guy here is driving over the bridge. He's going without me.
You know what's funny is I just talked to Jim Chiodo the other day.
Jim Chiodo?
Yeah, and
Okay.
he said he drove up to Mackinac to drive across the bridge just randomly, which is quite a drive to just drive over a bridge, but that's what he chose to do. And it was closed when he got there.
This is the leader of the Ottawa County Patriots, the Tea Party of Ottawa County, right? That's what we're talking about?
Yes.
So he didn't obviously just drive there to drive across this mess.
Yeah.
Had he never done it before? Or
I'm not sure. He just said some other things got canceled, so he was going to drive up and drive across the bridge.
And it was closed.
And it was closed when he got there.
Well, you know what? Probably him and his wife going for a drive. They're very nice people.
Oh, they're great.
Yep, they really, really are. The amount of volunteerism, not ideological, by the way, folks, because as soon as you hear Patriots or Tea Party, some folks on the other side, and maybe even some of the folks on our side now, push back a little bit. The guy's a nice guy. He does a tremendous amount of volunteerism. If the average person embraced civic duty the way he does, we would not have problems in America. We just wouldn't. If people cared that much. So I don't want to turn this into a salute to Jim, but I'm saluting Jim.
Yes, sir.
That's how I see that. Listen, you've been to a state convention before?
I went to my first one back last August.
Okay. And the August one.
Yes, August.
Okay, now that convention didn't have congressional district caucuses.
No.
Okay, so this state convention, which happens every 2 years, this particular one, as it relates to caucus, I should say, there's the way the schedule worked is on Friday there was the second district caucus, which is the Republican Party's caucus or committee that represents. It's the Republican committee body that represents the second district to the state Republican Party. Is how the structure physically works. So folks that are not familiar with, by the way, this is true on the Democrat side also. Democrats and Republicans both have a county level party. They have a congressional district committee, and even the county party is really a committee, by the way, by legal definition. So you've got a county committee, a district committee, and then you've got the state party, whether it's Democrat or Republican. I don't go to the Democrat one. I'm not sure I'd be overly welcome, but I certainly attend. I've been to a lot of them, and listen, they're a lot of fun. But what makes them fun is that a lot of these people I've known for a long time, and we talk about Facebook from time to time on the show, and so you get to where your only contact with a person is on Facebook, and it's kind of a fascinating thing because back in the old days when I went, you'd run into someone you haven't seen since the last one, okay? But now when you go to them, you might have seen that person a half an hour before you got there, except for it was on Facebook. So it's just kind of but there's still the excitement of shaking hands and saying, how you doing? And there is a sense of fellowship. Genuinely there is. And I hear a lot about how people will say, oh, the party is divided and there's a civil war in the Republican Party and all of that. I guess, let me tell you this. I think that everyone in the Republican Party wants the same end result. There's always going to be differences in what path to achieve that same result. But what gives us the commonality is we want the same things in the end. So when I hear the media, specifically the media, not left or right, we'll say the media is unbiased and neutral. Let's pretend.
Wow.
Let's just pretend for a minute. When they talk about the Civil War going on in the Republican Party, it's not there. Now, I've got some people on our side going, yes, it does, Mike. What are you, on drugs? It isn't. It's a debate over how to achieve republicanism with a small r in Michigan and in America. Okay? So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google up the word republicanism as a form of government. That is a republic form of government. It's called republicanism. It's a representative government, which our founders believe was far better than a democracy or mob rule. And so everyone within the Republican field, I say everyone, that's a big brush. Everyone that I have a relationship with there that I communicate with are after a small Republican form of government. So that's the end result. And the goal of that, by the way, is opportunity for more people. That's what you want. We always hear about the 1%. Everyone's like, all those rich people. I want and I'm not rich, by the way. I want everyone to have an opportunity at the brass, including me, including you, even you with your purse. Okay. I want everybody to have an opportunity to work really hard and achieve something for it.
I am going to take a picture of this briefcase,
put it on
and put it on your Facebook.
Put it on the show's Facebook page.
Yeah, and we're going to do a poll.
There's going to be a lot of people do that. There'll be a lot of people laughing at you.
I'm going to put this on there, and I'm going to have you guys vote on whether it's a purse or a
Listen
briefcase.
Now, you made fun of Jim Riley with his PJ top, and now you walk in with a man purse. I'm telling you, Jim he proved himself to be a very nice guy by not slapping you back and making fun of you. Anyhow, okay, so caucus night on.
Did you win something?
I did win a contest that is a contest in election. I'm the second district chairperson, which is a committee. So there's a second congressional district committee for the Republican Party to the state Republican Party. I'm the chairperson of that now. But I got to tell you, for me, it isn't about those things. It's about saying to ourselves as a group of people, how can we increase our communication? That's one of my agendas. If there is a gap in trying to close how we achieve that unified goal, is to say, and I believe this, by the way, at the bottom of every political problem that I've encountered, and also every business problem that I've encountered, the ingredient that was missing was a lack of communication.
Always.
And you see that when you teach school. When you're trying to communicate to a class and they're not getting it, you got to pause and say, okay, am I communicating it right? And from their standpoint, they've got to pause and say, am I listening the way I need to? Do I have my head in the right spot? Both sides, whether you're teacher in class, whether you're two people on an equal footing that are trying to communicate to say what's the best course of action, to me it comes down to communication. And so as chair, to your point, when I sit here and I put my chairperson's hat on, I say, what is my main objective now as chairperson of this committee? The main objective is to do everything that I can possibly do to increase the communication between all of the folks within the Republican Party and, frankly, conservatism in general in the 2nd District.
I think you had it right, though. A lot of times, communication is the key to everything. You know, like you talked about the Snyder bill, when he shot that one down, I was furious. But it's because there was no communication saying, it's because of this piece of it, until I talked to you. But there's the other side of communication that you mentioned, listening. So you want to communicate.
People hear what
get them to listen.
People often hear what they want to hear.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned Facebook, so you'll see what will happen on there. There's always going to be a handful of people that want to throw bombs.
Oh, yeah.
Democrats have them. The Republican side has them. Independent sides, the Libertarian Party. Every group or organization, it doesn't even matter whether it's political or talking about shoeing horses, every group or organization has 3 or 4 people or some percentage of people that want to throw bombs, and that's what they want to do. And so there's nothing that anybody, including me, can do about that, except for I can do my best to communicate in general and then ask questions as they come in and all of that. But to your point, with the gun bill that caused you to be angry without understanding why he did it. Some people, by the way, don't like the reason he did it, and that's okay. We're not going to agree on everything. It's not possible. I've said this on this show a lot of times. I have never met 2 people that agree on everything. Never.
You're wrong all the time. I see that.
So are you.
See? I've never met two
We
people.
agreed on that.
Yeah, but no, I think that you're probably more often wrong than you think you are. So that's really the disagreement. And
I was wrong one time, but I was arguing with myself.
that's when you brought your purse. So the point though is to try to what we need to do, in my view, is to get back to some basic foundations of respect. So I can disagree with you. I can disagree with Snyder, by the way. That doesn't mean that I want to throw him in a campfire and move on. It means I'm hoping that I have an opportunity to communicate why I view what I think back, but in a respectful manner. Does that make sense? Am I thinking wrong here?
No, it's right. Good debate is good. There's cognitive and affective with an A. Conflict. And cognitive is where it's logical and it's a fact-based argument. And that's good. It's when you get into the other side of it, which is where you start getting the bomb throwers and the personal attacks, and let's just burn them at the stake. That's not good. It's not productive. It's not positive, and there's no good result out of that. And what you want is I want to communicate and listen.
These big, gigantic, long, multi-page rants.
Yeah.
Where people get one or two sentences into it and stop reading. Those aren't. They hurt, and they're not constructive. So the thing to sit down to do is say, how can we build round tables to bring people together while maintaining a respect to it? It's like, I got to use Barb Vanderveen as an example before I think I've gotten down to 60 seconds. He was either giving me the peace sign or 2 minutes a little bit ago. Barb Vanderveen was a state representative. Her and I, we didn't used to agree on a lot of stuff. We sat down, and when we sat down and actually talked, we agreed on vastly more than probably any other two people that I know of within the Republican atmosphere. And there's people on the Democrat side, by the way, that have that same pushback. And it came down to actually stopping with the nonsense and the rhetoric and sitting down and talking about the topics. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the differences are gone. So,
but when you do that sit down, Mike, you got to be willing to listen.
You got to be able to, absolutely. Folks, talking about listening, please give us a ring next Wednesday at 9 a.m. If you missed any of today's show and you want to know about guns and all of that, 11 o'clock tonight on iHeartRadio.com. You can hear it again. We'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Have a great week, folks.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.